Good evening, everybody. Welcome to J-Ho the Sports Dude, my very own Boston sports podcast. And oh boy, it's good to be back. All right, it's been a while since I'm back from winter break and back from my Florida trip. And hold on, let me check this off. All right, then, welcome back. Oh wow, we have a lot to talk about. We have a lot of stuff to talk about for the show since I've been back from break. And hopefully all of you guys are doing okay with this very bad weather. It's been really cold out. It's been like Antarctica temperatures. I apologize if my voice sounds a little froggy. I've been dealing with the cold, and I was sick at the beginning of the week. But whatever, I'll make it work. And all right, so we got a pretty busy schedule today. So obviously the Patriots are in the Super Bowl. Isn't that exciting? So we definitely get to talk about that for a little bit. But first on the schedule, we'll be talking about the Patriots Chiefs game, which is one of the most exciting games I think the Patriots have ever been a part of, besides maybe the Super Bowls. And we'll also we'll do a preview of the Super Bowl, and I'll also delve a little bit into the Saints-Rams game because I kind of feel like that kind of like if it wasn't for that, people would be talking about the Patriots Chiefs like basically all the time, and fans would be complaining about some of the calls in that game instead of the obvious call that I'll talk about when we get to that. And then we'll also get into there's a lot of NBA news also that came down too, which some of it actually came before a lot, kind of overshadowed the Super Bowl coverage, which is pretty shocking because there's nothing bigger than the Super Bowl. So we'll talk some NBA news. There was a pretty crazy deal with Kristaps Porzingis that happened, and some news with Anthony Davis and Kyrie Irving, and we'll talk a little about the Celtics, who have played pretty decently recently, and then we'll talk about the Boston Bruins, who have not been playing very good lately, and then also we'll also talk about the Baseball Hall of Fame inductees at the end, and then I'll ask a question. I'll answer some fan questions. Or I think in this case it's just a fan question. All right, then, why don't we move on to our first topic? So our first topic is the Patriots-Chiefs game, and an instant classic. And the Patriots won the game 37-31 in overtime against the Chiefs on the road in Arrowhead. And I think a lot of people did not think the Patriots were going to win this game. I mean, there were definitely a lot of people that did because the Patriots are just one of those teams that you can never completely count out. But like looking into this game, the Chiefs were like a juggernaut, and the Patriots this year have not been great on the road. They've been undefeated at home, but on the road it's been it's been pretty iffy. I believe they were 3-5 on the road, so not great. And some of their they've had some very ugly losses on the road. So going to this game, I was definitely worried, I was thinking the Chiefs probably had a very good shot of winning, and I think I was good. I was actually thinking about I was thinking about picking the Chiefs, but then I saw what they did to the Chargers, how they completely dismantled them, and we all know about Andy Reid in the playoffs and how he always underachieves. So I did think I did pick the Patriots, but not with true conviction. But the Patriots were able to put their road woes aside and win in Arrowhead, which is one of the hardest places to play in the NFL because of the crowd noise and the Kansas City Chiefs fans. Even though, to be honest, they don't really seem to win a lot of playoff games in Arrowhead. So it is a great home field advantage, but they don't really win any big games in Arrowhead. So and so yeah, this is the third straight Super Bowl for the Patriots. This is the ninth appearance by Tom Brady and Bill Belichick, and the 11th by the Patriots, which is most in NFL history. So that's insane. I mean, look, you got to think about the franchises that like haven't even been to a Super Bowl, like the Cleveland Browns or the Detroit Lions, and the Patriots and have been to 11, and Belichick and Brady have been to 9. So it's definitely insane. Also, I might as well. This kind of came to my mind, but remember that Miami game in which the Miami Miracle, in which that was that was probably the most devastating loss of the regular season, because it essentially took us out of the chance to get home field advantage in the playoffs. Well, it turns out it didn't really mean anything. In fact, it basically lowered the draft position of the Miami Dolphins, and and the Patriots are still going to the Super Bowl. So, honestly, in retrospect, that doesn't really mean much. But all right then. Why don't we actually go into the game? So let's look at some stats. So total yards: New England had 524 yards. Kansas City had 290 yards. Time of possession. Patriots owned time of possession. They held the ball for 43 minutes and 59 seconds and 20 minutes and 53 seconds. First downs, New England had 36 and Kansas City had 18. And as far as turnovers, New England had 2. So, and Kansas City did not turn the ball over once. So in the first half of this game, the Patriots got the ball first, which is interesting because usually my mindset is always you want to give the ball to the other team, so you get the ball after the second half. But it seems what the Patriots want to do, and they kind of did this in the Chargers game too, is they want to set the tempo for the game. So in the first half, the Patriots completely dominated. They ran the ball, they threw the ball, and they controlled the time of possession. And the Patriots defense, which I've been about as big a critic of that defense all year, but they definitely did their job. They shut the Chiefs' offense for the first half, which is pretty amazing considering this is probably the best offense this year and one of the best offenses in NFL history. And other than that interception Brady threw in the end zone and a drive that resulted in a punt, the Patriots were great on both sides of the ball. So, and in the first half, the Patriots had 16 first downs. Chiefs only had 3. On third down, they were 7 for 9. Chiefs were 1 and 4. They had 245 net yards. Chiefs had 32 net yards. And as far as time of possession, the Patriots had the ball for 21 minutes and 7 seconds, and the Chiefs had the ball for 8 minutes and 53 seconds. So basically, the Patriots dominated the first half. However, they were up 14 to nothing, and you would have hoped that they would be up by more because you know that this Chiefs offense is not going to be quiet forever. And even though the defense played very well in the first half, you know that this defense isn't that great. It's not like the Steel Curtain Steelers or anything. So I mean, obviously that play in which Brady threw the interception in the end zone was one of the reasons why this game was still a game. So you knew that going into halftime it definitely was not over. And on the opening drive, the Chiefs basically confirmed that. So on the next drive, the Chiefs score a touchdown, and then the Patriots also get a field goal in the third quarter. And then in the fourth quarter, the defense essentially fell apart, and the Chiefs could not be stopped on offense. After the field goal, the Chiefs got a touchdown, and then the Patriots got stopped on fourth down on a Rex Burkhead run. and then looked like the Patriots were going to turn the ball over with Edelman touching the ball, but it was overturned, and then that was basically undone by Brady by throwing an interception. And then the Chiefs scored a touchdown, but then the Patriots scored a touchdown, then the Chiefs scored a touchdown, and then it was essentially with 2 minutes that left Brady enough time to go down the field and lead the Patriots to get a touchdown to get the lead. And you knew that with time left, you don't give Brady that much time left to go down the field. And however, there was 39 seconds left on the clock, and basically based on how the defense was playing, predictably the Chiefs were able to go down the field and to tie the game with a field goal. And they probably might have had a small chance to get a touchdown if maybe they managed the clock a little better, but they were able to tie the game. And so we went to overtime, and the Patriots won the coin toss. And after that, you were pretty sure that the Patriots had a very good chance of winning the game. That's what they did. Brady went down the field, and then Rex Burkhead redeemed himself by running to the end zone. And then the Patriots broke the hearts of all the Kansas City Chiefs fans. So let's look at each aspect. Let's start with the offense. So I thought Brady was great, had a great game, especially in the fourth quarter when he was lights out, even though he had those 2 picks. And I thought he was just okay in the first half. Like, they mostly ran the ball when he was throwing short passes. And he had some, and he did throw that really nice touchdown to Philip Dorsett. But for the most part, I thought he was just okay. But in the second half, when the Chiefs were lighting up the Patriots defense, Brady had to step up and match Patrick Mahomes, and I think that's what he did in the second half. So Brady in the second half was 30 for 46 in the game. He threw for 348 yards. He had a touchdown and 2 interceptions. And I thought actually, in my opinion, the real star of this game, and basically throughout the whole playoffs, has been the offensive line of the Patriots, who have been amazing. And in this game, it was no different. Brady was not sacked once, and he was barely touched throughout the game. And they were also able to provide holes for the running backs in the running game. Speaking of the running game, I thought the running game was really good, with Sony Michel running for 113 yards, and the Patriots rushing for a total of 176 yards, which was able to allow the Patriots to control the clock. And I thought Julian Edelman made some very clutch catches, and so did Hogan. And Gronk reemerged and had probably his second best game of the season besides the game he had in Miami. Julian Edelman did drop some balls, but when he needed to make a catch, he showed up. He had 7 receptions for 96 yards, and Rob Gronkowski had 6 receptions for 79 yards. Chris Hogan had 5 receptions for 45 yards. And Philip Dorsett had a nice catch for the touchdown, but for the most part, he wasn't really much factor. And James White wasn't much of a factor in the receiving game, even though he did have some nice catches for some short yardage during the game. And also, I thought the defense, especially in the first half, did a pretty good job of putting pressure on Mahomes. And he was sacked 4 times in the game. And whenever they put pressure on him, he struggled. And whenever they didn't, that was the times when he basically destroyed the Patriots defense. And I thought the secondary did a good job, besides that deep bomb to Tyreek Hill. And they were fortunate that Patrick Mahomes missed a throw to Damian Williams, which would have resulted in a touchdown. And also, I thought they did a pretty good job of stopping the running game for the Chiefs. And it was basically a non-factor. Even though obviously Kareem Hunt's not there, so they don't exactly have an explosive running game. But still, I mean, when you have that much of a threat on throwing the ball, it could allow some running game. So running room. So I thought they did a very good job of stopping the run in this game. And the secondary, I thought the secondary and linebackers did a pretty solid job on Tyreek Hill and Travis Kelce, who were not big factors in this game. Um, but as a result, Sammy Watkins had a great game, and Damian Williams had a pretty good game receiving. So that's kind of what you get for when you basically have to try to take away Tyreek Hill and Travis Kelce, who are the game breakers for the Patriots. So I thought the defense did a great job in the first half. Second half, not so much, but they did enough to not blow the game. And I thought special teams did a pretty good job. I mean, Gostowski didn't really have much of an impact in this game. He only got one field goal. And when Tyreek Hill received a punt, he got negative yards. So that was a very good job by the special teams, because Tyreek Hill, he's definitely a threat in the punt game, and he can definitely kill you on a punt return. And also the Patriots dodged a bullet on the Julian Edelman punt return, when it looked like for a second he touched the ball and the Chiefs got the ball back, but when on review it looked like he didn't touch it. That's what I thought. So why don't we go into there was definitely some controversial aspects to this game. It looked like Julian Edelman touched the ball at first, but then on replay you could see that based on my eyes, it looked like he didn't touch it. And I can understand some people say that it wasn't conclusive enough. And basically the rule is you don't have definitive evidence, you can't overturn the call on the field. And the call on the field was a turnover. But from what I heard from the referees, they got a better angle in which it showed that he did not touch the ball. And plus, based on my judgment, it looked like he didn't touch the ball. So I agree with the call, unsurprisingly, but I can understand why some people are mad. And then there was the roughing the passer on Brady in the game, in which there was sort of a chop block to Brady's chest, and that was called pass interference. I mean, it was a bad call. There's no doubt about it, but I believe it was on second down, so it could have possibly impacted the game. But in my opinion, based on how they were torching that Chiefs defense, and that Chiefs defense is not that good, they probably would have gotten the first down anyway on third down, and they probably could have gotten it. I wouldn't take it out of the picture that they could have gotten it on. They could have gotten the first down on fourth down. So also. It was Chris Jones that had the roughing the passer call, and also there was 2 times in which Chris Hogan caught a ball, and well, at least it looked like it at first, and then you look closely and they had to review the play in which, and one of them was the first one was rule the catch, and the other was not rule the catch. I know those were I actually thought first looking at it that both of them were going to be called non-catches, but the first one, there wasn't enough evidence to overturn it, so I kind of understood the call, the letting the call stand. And also, the second one there was a lot more evidence that that the ball hit the ground, so that made sense to overturn the call. And also, I might as well mention it. On the game-winning drive, D Ford was offsides, and on that play, Brady threw an interception that basically would have sealed the game, but it was overturned because D Ford was offsides. Yeah, that was definitely a lucky play for the Patriots. Um, First off, great. I mean, I heard Andy Reid was complaining about making that call. I mean, he was obviously offsides, so I don't know what Andy Reid's talking about. How about Andy Reid learns how to not choke in big pressure games? Um, and I think, and from what I understood, Brady was looking downfield, and so he quickly turned to the other side and threw a really quick ball. So it was a little inaccurate, and which bounced off of the receiver's hands, and then ended up as an interception. But yeah, I think I would like to think that if there wasn't a penalty, because like usually when when you see there's a penalty, you get a free play. You just kind of get to be a little looser and like try to make a big play. But yeah, I mean, it was definitely a lucky break for the Patriots, and for D4, the person who was offsides. Thank you very much. And also, we might as well talk about this. There's also the issue of a lot of people are complaining about the overtime rule and how in overtime, basically, if you win the coin toss and you get a touchdown, the game is over, and the other team offense doesn't get to go on the field to redeem themselves or like continue the game. I can kind of understand that. I wouldn't completely be opposed to the idea of maybe the other team getting the ball back, and if they get a touchdown, the game continues. Or the idea of basically in overtime, there's no coin flip. It's basically a continuation of the fourth quarter. So like if the Patriots have the ball, have the last possession of the fourth quarter, they get the possession in the overtime. I actually wouldn't be completely opposed to that. But I also do understand that the NFL does not want these games to go on forever because football games are already really long. So I mean, if you don't want to extend the game because one people don't have some people don't have the time to watch the entire game, and two, TV network stuff, like they have to save time for other shows on the TV station. So I kind of like the idea of not having a coin toss in overtime and just continuing to the fourth quarter, but I don't know. I think the overtime rule is fine for the most part. I mean like when you win the coin toss, it's not a guarantee that you're going to win the game. I mean, look at the New Orleans Saints. They got the ball first in overtime, and they lost. And Drew Brees threw a pick, and the Rams won with a field goal. So it's not really a guarantee that you're going to win when you get the ball first. You have a higher chance of winning, but it's still not a guarantee. So I thought overall the Patriots played better than the Chiefs. They probably weren't as talented as the Chiefs, but I think overall they played a much better game than the Chiefs, and deservedly so. They're going to the Super Bowl. All right, speaking of the Super Bowl, let's do a Super Bowl preview. So, isn't this exciting? When I do this show, I get to preview a World Series, and I get to preview a Super Bowl. So why don't we take a look at Super Bowl 53, which is a Super Bowl between the Patriots and Rams, which is actually a rematch of Super Bowl 36, which was Brady's and Bill Belichick's first Super Bowl. Except it was the St. Louis Rams, not the Los Angeles Rams. So, and this is interesting because the head coach and quarterback dynamic between the two teams is completely different. Like you get the young group and the veteran group. Like the age gap between them is crazy. There's like a 17-year age gap between Tom Brady and Jared Goff. When Tom Brady won his first Super Bowl, he was 24. Jared Goff was 7 years old. That's insane. And when Bill Belichick won his first Super Bowl with Tom Brady in 2002, Sean McVay was still in high school. So just think about that. that's just really really weird. So let's look at the stats for each of these teams. So in the regular season, the Patriots were fourth in the NFL in points, and the Rams were second. So you from what you get from these from what you can see from these two teams, offense was definitely their strength. However, their defenses were not great. The Rams were 25th in points allowed, and the Patriots were 26th in points allowed. So defense is not so in the regular season was not either of these teams' strengths. However, in the postseason, the Patriots are first in scoring, and the Rams are third. And the Patriots are actually last in points in points allowed, and the Rams were second to last in points allowed. So not really much has changed as far as the strengths of the teams. Even though I would say, from what I've seen, both the Rams and the Patriots are playing better defense. And I did see a fair amount from the Rams in the regular season. I think the defenses have actually played better in the playoffs than they have in the regular season. So, all right. And so looking at both the teams, they're definitely both star-studded teams. When you look at the Rams, you got to start with the quarterback Jared Goff, who, I mean, when he came into the league, he looked like he was going to be a bust. He looked awful. He could barely throw a forward pass. He looked like a bust. And then Jeff Fisher disease left, and then Sean McVay came in, and now Jared Goff looks like an elite quarterback. And and then as far as running backs, you got Todd Gurley and C.J. Anderson, who are always a threat in the running game. You got wide receivers Brandon Cooks, Josh Reynolds, and Robert Woods. Remember Brandon Cooks? Interesting reunion. And the Rams have a very solid offensive line led by Andrew Whitworth. And also on defense, I mean, doesn't get bigger than Aaron Donald, who might be the best defensive player in the NFL. And Ndamukong Suh taking care of the middle of the field. So that's a scary duo. And you also got Dante Fowler Jr. at linebacker. You also get cornerbacks Marcus Peter and Aqib Talib. And you also get the young wonder of head coach Sean McVay, who has essentially revolutionized the league. Basically, a lot of the coaching hires this offseason have resulted in Sean McVay being successful. You look at Arizona Cardinals trying to get Cliff Kingsbury, and the Jets getting Adam Gase, and the Bengals, I believe, getting the quarterbacks coach for the Rams. So because of Sean McVay, everybody wants a very young, offensive-minded head coach who can coach up the quarterback, all because of Sean McVay. And also, you got Wade Phillips at defensive coordinator, one of the greatest defensive coordinators of all time, who was basically responsible for that Broncos defense that led them to a Super Bowl, and which gave the Patriots some trouble. And also you got they have a very good special teams unit led by John Fossil as the special teams coach, who's one of the best special teams coaches in the NFL. And as far as the Patriots stars, I mean, you all know who they are. You got Tom Brady, the GOAT, the greatest quarterback of all time. You got the Patriots four horsemen in the backfield with Sony Michel, who's provided the Patriots with something they haven't really had in a while since I want to say Corey Dillon, but very consistent running game. I mean, LeGarrette Blount was a very solid running back, but he was more. I considered him more of a guy that complemented the passing game and could get into the end zone on a short yardage situation, or get the extra yards when you needed them. I think Sony Michel has shown that he can be an every down back who can can help the Patriots control the clock. And you also have James White, who is always threat for getting clutch short yardage in the passing game. You also get Rex Burkhead, who is who is very solid at doing both with running and catching. And you also get the fullback James Devlin, who can block and catch and run. And then also you get Julian Edelman, who is one of the clutchest wide receivers of all time. And you also got Rob Gronkowski, who isn't quite himself, but you can never underestimate and can be a threat in the passing and definitely and still a threat in the blocking game. And also you got an offensive line that has been basically completely dominant throughout the playoffs. I actually looked up a stat about the offensive line. Guess how many times Tom Brady's been hit in the playoffs? Once. He's been hit once in the playoffs, and he's been pressured 11 times out of 90 dropbacks. That is amazing. And on defense, you got Stephon Gilmore, who has proven to be one of the best cornerbacks in the NFL. In fact, this year probably maybe the best cornerback in the NFL. And also you got the McCourty twins with Devin and Jason McCourty to cover the back end. You got Trey Flowers, who's a very solid pass rusher to get to the quarterback. And as far as the coaching staff, obviously you got to start with the GOAT of coaches, Bill Belichick. You also got Josh McDaniels and Brian Flores, the offensive and defensive coordinator, who and the Patriots also have a very solid special teams unit. And you also have the threat of Cordell Patterson, who can return punts for a lot of yardage. So the Patriots have definitely a few stars of their own. So let's look at what the Patriots need to do to win the Super Bowl, to get the 6th Lombardi Trophy. So, in my opinion, I think what the Patriots need to do is they need to approach this game kind of similar to another LA team, the LA Chargers. I think the Patriots should utilize the short passing game, with the linebacker being one of the weaknesses of the Rams. So I think I expect White and Edelman to have big games. Also, one of the problems last year in the Super Bowl with Edelman being out was you didn't have a guy who could you could get easy yardage with you to get the ball out of Brady's hands really quick. So the Patriots had to Tom Brady had to hold the ball for a while to throw the ball deep, because there weren't really any guys who you could get the ball to in quickly out of Brady's hands to. So, and that kind of, I think that kind of came ahead when Brady was holding the ball for a while and he got strip sacked. So I think Edelman being there is definitely a big factor because it allows Brady, someone who Brady completely trusts and can get the ball to very quickly to get easy yard and some big third downs. And also James White will fit that role too. And I also think they need to run the ball to limit the amount of offensive snaps that that the Rams have. Which is kind of a hard task with Aaron Donald and Sue up the middle, but if they can run the ball, I think they can control the clock and control the game. However, I have a feeling that the short passing game is probably going to be more of a factor because Sue and Donald are in the middle, so it's going to be very hard to run the ball on that Rams defense. And also, when they need to, I think Brady can stand in the pocket and throw the ball deep. I don't really, honestly, I don't really love the Rams cornerbacks. I don't really love Marcus Peters, and I don't really love Robbie Coleman, who decided to open his mouth this weekend about how Brady was old. So, and how the Patriots were arrogant. So I expect them to throw the ball his way a few times. The one cornerback that strikes fear in me is Aqib Talib. other than that, I don't really fear the Rams cornerbacks. So I think Tom Brady can pick apart the Rams cornerbacks as long as they don't allow Sue or Donald to run through the middle and get to Brady a bunch of times. And the thing about guys who run up the middle, um, like if you like, it's kind of hard. It's easier. I think it's easier to get quickly to the quarterback through the edge than the middle. So as long as they push him back a few seconds and allow Brady time in the pocket to make a quick decision, I think they can limit the amount of damage that Aaron Donald, and Ndamukong Suh have. Also, on defense, I think the Patriots need to make the Rams running backs essentially a non-factor. Todd Gurley has not been exactly himself in the playoffs, and C.J. Anderson has been pretty solid, but C.J. Anderson is not an elite running back, so I think if they can limit the Rams, essentially make the Rams running game a non-factor, that will make the Rams one-dimensional, and I think if you make them one-dimensional, I think they have a very good chance of limiting the amount of damage that the Rams offense can do. I think, and also the Patriots need to limit Brandon Cooks, who is their game breaker on the outside, and he's kind of like he kind of has Tyreek Hill's speed a bit. I don't think he's quite as fast as Tyreek Hill, and he's not. They don't usually use Brandon Cooks for the way the Chiefs use Tyreek Hill for multiple gadget stuff, but Brandon Cooks is a speedster, and he's a game breaker for the Rams. So I think they need to limit the amount of damage that Brandon Cooks can do, and also they don't necessarily need to go home and get sacks on Jared Goff, even though that would help. But I think you need to get pressure on him, because I think Jared Goff, being a young quarterback, and I've watched a few Rams games, I think if you can get pressure on Jared Goff, he definitely doesn't make the best decisions, and he can make a lot of. He's prone to making a lot of mistakes under pressure. And while this Patriots defense is nowhere near as good as the Bears defense this year, I watched a bit of that Bears game, and they constantly got to Jared Goff, and they essentially took away Todd Gurley. And, like, Jared Goff had by far probably the worst game of this year. He looked like he did when Jeff Fisher was there. It was that bad. So I don't expect the Patriots defense to quite that, but I think if you make the running game a non-factor, you limit Brandon Cooks, and then you put pressure on Jared Goff, and him being a young quarterback making some bad decisions, I think the Patriots defense can limit the Rams offense and will assist the offense. So looking at this game, I expect this to be a really, really good Super Bowl. However, I believe the Patriots will prevail in this game. I believe they have the experience. I believe that Brady still has a very bad taste in his mouth about what happened last year against the Philadelphia Eagles. I think the Rams have been playing really well, but I think the Patriots are the Patriots, and Bill Belichick will come up with a great game plan, and I believe the Patriots will win. And also, both teams are pretty healthy coming into this game. The Patriots I don't think they have any major injuries. The Rams obviously don't have Cooper Kupp, but the Rams are pretty healthy too. And hopefully the Patriots are well rested and can play the best game they can all year. And like I said, Edelman being there makes a huge difference. The offensive line being as good as they have makes a difference, and I think having Tom Brady and Bill Belichick makes a difference. So my prediction for this game is Patriots 31, Rams 27. Well, let's hope that's true, and go Pats. All right, then. Why don't we quickly talk about the Saints Rams game, which was I actually watched that too, and it was actually before the Patriots game. So Definitely was a very good game. And if it weren't steeped in controversy, it definitely it definitely would be. We would talk about the game and the quarterbacks and passing of the torch instead of that controversial call. And I will say that part of me was kind of happy that there was a controversial call um, at in this game because it kind of overshadowed some of the weird calls in the Chiefs games, in the Patriots Chief game. But on the other hand, I mean, this it was a it was okay. Let's go into the game for a sec. So the Rams won 26-23 in overtime. So Saints dominated the first quarter. And they went up 13-0. In the second quarter, Rams scored 10 points to make it a game. Both teams scored a touchdown in the third quarter. In the fourth quarter, the Rams scored a field goal, and then Breeze threw a 43-yard bomb to Ted Ginn Jr., and then they were in the red zone. And then there was the non-call, which I'll get to later. First I'll describe it. So essentially, Breeze was throwing the ball to Lewis, and Robbie Coleman jammed him and ran into him, so he couldn't get to the ball. And that essentially, normally when that happens, you get a pass interference. And also, not to mention, it was head to head too, so it should have been called head to head. But the refs didn't call it. And then after that, the Saints did get a field goal to get the lead. But the Rams were able to go down the field and kick a field goal to send the game to overtime. And then in overtime, the Saints got the ball first, like I said earlier, and Breeze threw an interception, and the Rams were able to get a field goal to win the game. So before I go into the call, I gotta say, I was very impressed by what the Rams did. They went into a stadium that is one of the hardest places to play, a Mercedes-Benz Superdome, and they were able to beat probably the best team all year. And with the Saints, they kind of put themselves in a bad position to lose this game. When they got into the red zone, the first play they did was they threw the ball, which allowed the clock to stop and allowed the Rams to save a timeout. And even though you do want the ball in your best player's hands when the game is on the line, I still think they probably should have ran the ball twice and then maybe think about throwing it on third down. And if you look at the numbers and you look at the overall game, the Rams did outplay them. And if it weren't for that call, they did deserve to win. However, even though games, you should not let games be decided by a call, the Saints did get screwed. They got screwed. If they got that call, they would have got a first down, and they would have been able to milk the clock and get a field goal and go to the Super Bowl. So they got screwed. And I don't know if I'm overreacting, but honestly, this might be the worst decision by a ref ever in NFL history. Worse than the Tuck rule, which this kind of reminds me a little bit of. Worse than the Music City Miracle. Worse than the Immaculate Reception. Worse than that Fail Mary. Remember that game against the Packers and Seahawks with the replacement refs, and it looked like it looked like the Packers intercepted it, but it was called a touchdown. And also, maybe about as bad as those terrible calls in Super Bowl 40 with the Seahawks and Steelers. Another play that this kind of reminds me of is the Jerry Rice fumble against the 49ers when the 49ers played the Packers. That wasn't called in the 1999 wildcard game that later resulted in the TO catch in the end zone, which was called the catch part 2. Worse than the Dez Bryant non-call, and worse than the Burt Emanuel rule with the Bucks versus the Rams. It's much worse than all of that. With the Tuck rule, there is a rule in place that there was a rule that you could argue resulted that in a forward pass. Music City Miracle, I mean, it was very, very close, so you could maybe argued it. Immaculate Reception, I mean, there's not really a good video footage of the play, so I mean, it would be hard to overturn it without any definitive evidence. So, I mean, this call was just awful. I mean, I understand that when in the playoffs, refs don't want to be the ones that result in a team winning or losing, so they allow the players to play, which I like. But when a call is super obvious like that one, you have to call it. I mean everybody knew it was a pass interference. I mean, even if you don't know anything about football, you can just look at it and go like, oh, that's a pass interference. And the fact that they didn't call it is just complete bogus. And do you know what makes this call worse than all the other calls that I mentioned, all the other things that I mentioned earlier? The NFL admitted that this was the wrong call. They called Sean Payton and told him that it was the wrong call. Like with the Tuck rule and with the Music City Miracle, the Fail Mary, and all those other things. Oh, and the Dez Bryant non-catch. The NFL stands by those calls. The NFL does not stand by this call. And so the league admitted that it was wrong. And like this is terrible because by doing that call and the Saints not going to the Super Bowl, I mean, like, you're affecting legacies for players. You're affecting salaries. You're affecting people's lives because you don't know if the Saints are going to be able to come back. And Drew Brees is getting up there in age, so he don't have that many opportunities to get back to another Super Bowl. And like, I think conspiracies are a bunch of hogwash, but this gives credence to people that think the NFL is corrupt and that they fix games, which I don't think this speaks to that. I think this kind of just speaks to incompetence by the NFL refs, but it gives credence to the people who say that. And so, looking at this, the NFL, this is a flashpoint for the NFL. This has got to change. So a lot of people have been, because of this, have been suggesting, what can we do to make sure this never ever happens again? I've heard, obviously it's been thrown out. I think Bill Belichick threw this out, that you could make every play reviewable, which I don't think you should do, because I mean, games like the overtime, like I said with overtime, that would make the game longer and it would make the game drag. It would make games drag with officials just like looking at video and like waiting for the game to continue, and it would make watching a game worse. And also, I heard a suggestion that in the 2-minute mark, any play is reviewable. Actually, the theory that I like, the thing that I like is I believe that coaches should be able to challenge any play, just any play in a game. So if Sean Payton had a challenge flag, he could throw the challenge flag and they could review it and they would overturn the call. I wouldn't completely be opposed to that. So, and leave them with 2 challenges. And I wouldn't mind if the NFL had a rule in which you're allowed to challenge any play in the last 2 minutes of each half. So those are some suggestions I think that could improve the situation, because this was awful. And also, human cyborg Roger Goodell did address this in his press conference, but I didn't really bother listening. I could care less what that guy says. I mean, he doesn't really say anything like interesting or that's new. It's just basically just like, oh, we're just looking into it. Oh, it's just a very PC, like, bland answer. And also, while looking at the news stories about this, I did find out that Roger Goodell does have the power to change the results of a game which I honestly I don't know what scenario would be necessary. I don't know why the commissioner would have that power, and I don't really know what scenario in which that would be possible. I mean, this is about as egregious of an on-call or a team being screwed ever. So I can't really think of a scenario in which the NFL would change the result of a game. And also, some people have suggested overturning the game or replaying the game, and you can't do that. I don't think it's fair to the Rams, who, I mean, like, they already celebrated and they are preparing for the Super Bowl. So I mean, it's not really fair to them to overturn the game or to make them replay it. And also, I also found out that all the refs who were doing this game have Southern California connections. Bill Vanovich, who was the game led the game's fishing crew, lives in Newport Beach, California, and down judge Patrick Turner, whose primary responsibility was following Lewis on the blown call from start to finish, lives in Lakewood, California, in Los Angeles County, and side judge Gary Calavito, whose job was initially watch outside receiver Dan Arnold before shifting his focus to the ball thrown to Lewis, lives in Santa Barbara, and back judge Todd Prukop, I might be screwing these names, who's stationed in the end zone as an extra set of eyes on the play, lives in Mission Viejo, California. So I don't really think that had anything to do with the call, but I do think it is just bad PR to just have guys from California be refs. I mean, and also, I don't know if I would advocate firing these guys because, I mean, being a ref is hard, and these are the best refs probably in the NFL. So, but I mean, they didn't really screw up, and these refs needs to be more held more accountable. So, hopefully, the NFL can come to a situation in which this never ever happens again, because this was just an awful look for the NFL. All right, then, why don't we take a break, and when we come back, we'll discuss some basketball with some pretty big news from the NBA. All right, then, welcome back to J-Ho, the Sports Dude. So now let's talk about some NBA after talking about some football. So before we get into the Boston Celtics and how they've been playing a lot better recently, we have to talk about this recent story that broke a few days ago, which shook the NBA and made my jaw drop to the ground. So the Knicks have recently traded Kristaps Porzingis away. The unicorn is gone. So the Knicks have traded Kristaps Porzingis, Courtney Lee, and Tim Hardaway Jr. to the Mavericks for Wesley Matthews, Dennis Smith Jr., and DeAndre Jordan. And also, the Knicks get 2 future first-round picks from the Dallas Mavericks. So, I mean, when I initially heard this, I thought I was laughing really hard, and I thought the Knicks were idiots, and I just thought about how angry and heartbroken the Knicks fans were. However, after thinking about it and looking at the details, I think this is probably the best thing for the Knicks right now. From my understanding, the Porzingis and the Knicks had a meeting, and from that meeting, the Knicks gathered that Porzingis was not happy about the direction the Knicks were going. So I think he made it kind of clear that he's probably not going to re-sign with the Knicks because this offseason, Porzingis is a free agent. So, and it was pretty clear to them, I think, that Porzingis was not going to re-sign. And so, I think instead of just letting him go and getting nothing, I guess this is probably the best they could do for trading Porzingis. And I'm kind of surprised they didn't wait till a trade deadline, but this might be the best pick trade they got. And honestly, looking at this, looking at this deal, it's essentially a salary cap dump for the Knicks. Because Courtney Lee and Tim Hardaway Jr. are the worst contracts that the Knicks have on their books. So essentially what they want is to clear cap room and save room for potential free agents this offseason, because this free agent class is really good. Kevin Durant, Kyrie Irving, Kemba Walker are a few names in the draft class coming up. And also Jimmy Butler. And right now the Knicks are really, really awful. And so they're obviously going to get a really high draft pick. And so you want to hold on to that, maybe for maybe possibly trade for Anthony Davis if they wanted to. I'd probably hold on to the pick, and also Porzingis has been sidelined for a year with an ACL injury, and in fact, I think it's been announced that Porzingis is not going to play this year. So I guess the Knicks really had no choice but to do this deal, and plus you get draft picks. You get Dennis Smith Jr., who has some talent. It just doesn't seem to be working in Dallas with him. And you get DeAndre Jordan, who's a pretty good player. So I understand why they did it. But to me, this just kind of screams to the incompetence of the Knicks, that you have these terrible contracts and you just basically do this trade to get rid of them. Just speaks to the previous regime and how they gave away these awful contracts, and now they have to just clear them up. And what you would want, you think you would want to do, is have Porzingis there to lure free agents in. You would think that the plan would be to make Porzingis happy and then keep him with the Knicks and allow him to attract free agents to come to New York. Because other than the money and the idea of playing at Madison Square Garden, look at the Knicks. What's on that team? You got Enes Kanter, who's I guess a decent player. Yeah, and they don't really have a roster. I watched them a few times. They're horrible. But they're right now they're up there with the Bulls and the Cavs and the Suns and the Hawks for the worst teams in the NBA. So honestly, I'm not really sure how attractive New York is as far as a free agent destination. With Kevin Durant, I don't know why the only reason I could see him going to New York is if he decides that, all right, I won my championships, now I'm gonna cement my legacy by winning a championship with my own team. Because a lot of people look down at Kevin Durant because he joined a super team. So maybe Durant would want to go to New York to get his own team. But I still think that's a little up in the air. And Kyrie Irving, I'll talk a little bit about him a little later. But who's a better organization, the Knicks or the Celtics? And who has better players right now, the Knicks or the Celtics? Yeah. Who has a better chance of getting Anthony Davis? I think the Celtics have a better chance than the Knicks. So I don't know why he would leave the Celtics for the Knicks, except the fact that he is from New Jersey, and I'm assuming he grew up cheering for the Knicks. So maybe there's that. But and then the other free agents, why would you want to go to the Knicks? I mean, seriously. So this was probably the best that the Knicks could do, considering the situation that they're in. But I mean, if they don't get two free agents, big marquee free agents this offseason that can compete for a championship, then the Knicks are screwed. All right, then. Why don't we? All right, let's move on to the Boston Celtics, who have been playing a lot better recently. So let's start with the Celtics game against the Raptors, which was a humongous game with the Raptors being the 1 seed in the East. And this was a really thrilling game. The Celtics were able to win 117-108, and this was this game made me very nervous, and I think I almost had some heart attacks because of this game. So let's look at some stats. Field goal percentage, Boston shot 50%. Toronto shot 44.6%. Three-point percentage, Boston 46.7. Toronto 24.1. Turnovers, Boston had 15. Toronto had 13. Rebounds, Toronto had 48. Boston had 53. This was definitely a game in which the stars for both teams shined. Kawhi Leonard had 33 points. Serge Ibaka had 22 points. However, Al Horford had 24 points, and Kyrie Irving had 27 points, and Gordon Hayward had 18 points. And as far as Kyrie Irving, he hit all the big baskets to seal this game. So in the first quarter, Toronto outscored Boston 36-30. So basically, first quarter, Toronto mostly dominated. However, in the second quarter, the Celtics seemed to just go off, and Toronto just couldn't buy a shot. Boston outscored 34-17 compared to Toronto, and Gordon Hayward really went off. However, in the third quarter, the Celtics got calmed a little bit, and Toronto outscored the Celtics 30-23 to make it a very close game. And then in the fourth quarter, for a while, it was hard for anybody to get a basket. And then Toronto was able to get the lead at points, but Kyrie Irving stepped up to the plate and was able to hit some big baskets. And the Celtics were able to get a very big victory over the Toronto Raptors, who they played pretty well this year. So very, very big game. Very enthralling game. Probably one of the most exciting games. Might be the most exciting game the Celtics have played this year. So on to the next game. The next game, the Grizzlies played the Celtics, and they won 122-116. Even though Memphis made it close at the end. And as far as the stars, Mike Conley had 26 points. Kyrie Irving had 38 points. So both the star point guards definitely put on a show. Field goal percentage, Boston had 51.2% of their shots. Memphis hit 44.6% of their shots. 3-point percentage, Boston hit 44.7%. Memphis hit 45.7%. Turnovers, Boston 17, Memphis had 9. Rebounds, Memphis had 41, Boston had 59. So, a little closer than you would have liked to have wanted, but a win nevertheless. Especially the Celtics, who have in close games, they've lost a lot of games to teams that they should have beat. So this is still a good win. Next, they went on the road to play the Hawks at 113-105. And even though it's the Hawks, who are horrible, and this is going on the road and it's a good way to get some confidence on the road, because the Celtics this year have not been amazing on the road. And so they started the game pretty flat. The Hawks actually led a lot of this game, but in the fourth quarter they picked it up and were able to win. This is actually the game that Marcus Smart went after DeAndre Bembry and got ejected. So that's that game. And I think he got fined and not suspended, which is a little shocking, but whatever. And Kyrie Irving had 32 points. And was 11 for 19 on the field. And field goal percentage, Boston hit 44.3% of their shots. Atlanta hit 43.5%. Three-point range, Boston hit 37.5% of their threes. Atlanta hit 29.3% of their threes. Turnovers, Boston had 15. Atlanta had 20. Rebounds, Boston had 50. Atlanta had 54. So, both teams weren't exactly great from three. And then next, they played the Miami Heat and won 107-99. So the Celtics dominated most of this game. The Heat did kind of make it interesting in the fourth quarter, but it really wasn't enough. So the Celtics were able to hold on and win. The The Celtics shot 49.4%, and Miami shot 41.9 as far as field goal percentage. At 3-point range, Boston shot 40%. Miami shot 31.4%. Turnovers, Boston 19, Miami had 20. And rebounds, Boston had 47, and Miami had 50. So, and Kyrie Irving had 26 points. So he was the star of that game. Next, the Celtics played the really horrible Cleveland Cavaliers and won 123 to 103. Kyrie was out with an illness, but it really didn't matter because they were playing the Cleveland Cavaliers, who are really horrible. Cleveland was competitive in the first quarter, but after that, they just got the snot beat out of them. Field goal percentage, Boston hit 52.3% of their shots. Cleveland hit 43.7%. 3-point percentage, Boston hit 48% of their shots. Cleveland hit 43.3%. Turnovers, Cleveland had 21. Boston had 14. Rebounds, Boston had 45. Cleveland had 53. And as far as stars of this game, Jaylen Brown had a real good game. He had 23 points. Scary Terry, who I believe was the biggest star of this game, had 26 points. And Gordon Hayward had 18 points as well. So good all-around effort, even though they played the Cleveland Cavaliers, who are really awful. And next, the Celtics played the Golden State Warriors, defending champions. Now, earlier I said Toronto, that what might have been the biggest game of the year. This might have actually been the big. This is also a contender for the biggest game of the year because you're playing the defending champs, and this is how you measure how good you are right now. And I was hoping they were able to beat Golden State because this was probably the best chance they got to beat them because they were at home and they've been much better at home. And so, unfortunately, they were not able to pull out the victory. They lost 115 to 111. So the stars of this game were Kevin Durant, who had 33 points, and Kyrie Irving, who had 32 points. So stats, field goal percentage, Golden State hit 44.6% of their shots. Boston hit 41.4% of their shots. 3-point percentage, Golden State had hit 36.4% of their shots. Boston hit 37.5% of their shots. Turnovers, Golden State had 15. Boston had 14. Rebounds, Golden State had 58. Boston had 52. And also, Steph Curry had 24. Klay Thompson had 21 points. Both of these games, the bench really didn't do much. It was more about the starters. And also, Al Horford had 22 points, and Jason Tatum had 20 points. So they definitely made an impact. And in this game, it was very back and forth, with the Warriors having most of the lead, and the Celtics would eventually fight back, and eventually they would take the lead, but they couldn't really create enough distance between themselves and the Warriors, and predictably, if you don't create enough distance, the Warriors will come back, and that's what happened. And when we eventually got to the end of the game, the Celtics would score to take a lead, and the next thing you know, they would foul Kevin Durant, and then he would give the Warriors a lead. And then the Celtics could not get a basket at the end after Thompson and Smart hit threes, and then Thompson hit 2 free throws to give Golden State a lead. And then next thing you know, Draymond Green was at the free throw line, and he missed both, which you would have thought would have given the Celtics a chance to either tie or take a lead in this game. But Draymond Green was able to get a rebound since Smart didn't box out, and then they fouled Steph, and Steph might be the greatest free throw shooter ever. So after that, you knew that the Celtics were done, and that was the case. So it was a great performance, and it was a valiant effort, but unfortunately, it was not enough to beat the defending champs. And then the next game, the Celtics played the Brooklyn Nets and won 112 to 104. So Kyrie did not play with I believe a hip injury, and also Spencer Dinwiddie did not play as well. And so the Celtics dominated most of this game, even though the Nets did fight back in the third quarter. But it really wasn't enough, and the Celtics won pretty easily. Jaylen Brown had 21 points, and D'Angelo Russell had 25 points. So I thought it was an overall great team effort against a pretty solid team who they did lose to earlier in the year. But even though the Nets aren't going to win I don't think they're going to compete for a championship this year, it's still a very solid win. And Boston hit 45% of their shots. Brooklyn hit 37.9% of their shots. Three-point range, Boston hit 32.5% of the shots. Brooklyn hit 38.2%. Turnovers, Boston had 18. Brooklyn had 17. Brooklyn had 62 rebounds. Boston had 61. So, pretty impressive victory. Next, the Celtics ended their home stretch by playing the Hornets. And Kyrie was out again. And in this game, the Celtics completely destroyed the Hornets. They won 126-94, and it was a complete beatdown. Kemba Walker had 21 points, which was a very meaningless 21 points, and Jaylen Brown had 24 points. Field goal percentage: Boston hit 55.6% of their shots. Charlotte hit 43.8%. 3-point percentage: Boston hit 41.4%. Charlotte hit 32.5% of their shots. Turnovers: Boston had 12. Charlotte had 12. Rebounds: Boston had 50. Charlotte had 38. So they completely destroyed them. It was pretty interesting to watch. So, and then the next game, they went on the road to New York, and this game was interesting because this is the first time. This is after the big trade between the Dallas Mavericks. So, even though yes, this was on the road, so you would want the Celtics to have a good performance because they've been pretty bad on the road this year. But as expected, the Celtics won, beating a really horrible Knicks team. And I did think the Knicks, they did compete. Like, they did keep the game closest in stretches. Like, you could definitely tell that David Fizdale was able to motivate these guys to competing and playing a little over their heads. But in the end, especially in the fourth quarter, they just couldn't do anything, and they lost 113 to the Celtics won 113-99. Kyrie Irving had 23 points, and as far as stats, field goal percentage, Boston hit 46% of their shots. New York hit 45.3%. 3-point percentage, Boston was 35.1%. New York was 29. Turnovers, Boston 7. New York had 18. Rebounds, Boston had 50. New York had 53. So definitely the turnovers impacted the game. And also there was a lot of "we want Kyrie" chants in New York because New York really, really wants to do superstar because they've just been so awful for so long. They're just so desperate. So whatever. So let's talk about what I've seen so far during the stretch and what I've seen from this season. So the season definitely has been a roller coaster. There have been a lot of highs, a lot of lows. Right now they're on a high, but hopefully they don't have any more lows because they have a lot of catching up to do with trying to catch up as far as seeding because the Celtics really put themselves in a bind earlier in the season, and hopefully maybe they can pass Philadelphia. I know Indiana's probably going to drop with, unfortunately, Oladipo had that pretty gruesome injury and is out for the season. Hopefully Oladipo's doing fine. He can bounce back next year because we don't want to see players getting hurt like that. It's just it doesn't do good for the sport. And so right now they're having a pretty good stretch. And I mentioned this earlier, but the Celtics have been much better on at home than on the road. At home, they are 20-6 in TD Garden. On the road, they're 12-13, which is below average. And so and to show how good they've been at home. They won 10 straight home games before they played the Golden State Warriors. And also, one thing that's encouraging about this team is the offense has picked up. Right now, they are 11th in offensive rating, which is not amazing, but considering where they were at the beginning of the year to where they are now, it's been definitely a big improvement as far as the offense. They are 5th in defensive rating, which is still good, but it's been decreased a little bit since they were first and third. And one thing I noticed about this team is they have a hard time putting teams away. Like whenever they have a big lead, they'll just kind of chill out and slouch and relax on defense, and then they'll allow the team to go on a run. Probably except for the Hornets, they'll allow a team to go on a run and make it a closer game that it should be. But then they'll eventually, especially during this stretch, they'll figure out a way to close the game, because in previous games they would just blow games. So it's encouraging to see that they have been able to close games, but they need to find ways to completely put teams away. Also, they turn the ball a little more than I'd like, so hopefully they can lower the amount of turnovers they get during a game. Also, one thing I noticed about this team is whenever they get completely out rebound, it's pretty much a guarantee that they lose. And if they make it close, as far as rebounds, they usually have a good shot of winning. And when they completely out rebound a team, they usually win. So rebounding for this team is really important. When Baines and Horford were out, it definitely showed, because they were usually completely out rebound, and now that they're back, the rebounds have been better, and so that's definitely showed, and they've been winning a lot more lately. So I've liked what I've seen so far of this team. Hopefully they can keep it up, but definitely a work in progress. But this is a good. Right now, I think they're in a pretty good case and we'll see how they approach close to All-Star break. And next game, the Boston Celtics play the OKC Thunder, and this would be definitely a good litmus test for them to see where they stand, because OKC's a pretty good team. They're not they've had some bumps and bruises, but for the most part, the Thunder are a very good team, because you don't measure how good you are when you play the Knicks or the Cavs or the Hawks. You measure yourself by playing the great teams like the Thunder and the Warriors. So, looking forward to that. All right then, why don't we move on to some news? Because let's talk about some of the big news of the week as well, as pertaining to Anthony Davis, because that was probably the biggest news as far as the NBA is concerned. And it does have some Celtics implications too, because the Celtics really want Anthony Davis. So Adrian Wojnarowski reported that Davis wants out of New Orleans. He's letting the Hornets know that, the Pelicans know that he doesn't want to be there. He's not going to re-sign with them. And at least his agent said that, and I think Anthony Davis told his agent that. And so I'm going to read the quote that Rich Paul, who is also actually LeBron's agent, said. Anthony wants to be traded to a team that allows him a chance to win consistently and compete for a championship. Anthony wants to be honest and clear with his intentions, and the reason is informing them of this decision now. That is the best interest in both Anthony Davis and the organization's future. And then the Pelicans responded with this. Although we are disappointed in this decision, our organization's top priority is to bring an NBA championship to our city and build our team for long-term success. Our team said, relative to specific talks of a trade, we will do this on our own timeline, one that makes sense for our team and will not dictate by those outside of the organization. We have also requested the league to strictly enforce the tampering rules associated with this transaction. So, and also the NBA did do an investigation, and they fined Rich Paul and Anthony Davis for saying the comments that they did. And honestly, in sports, fines aren't really anything. So, yeah, this is not exactly shocking. I mean, this is kind of expected. I think everybody. This was not a secret that Anthony Davis is not going to stay in New Orleans because they are not a great organization, and they have not put a legit championship contending team for Davis and the city of New Orleans. And also, here's the details about this about making a deal with for Davis. And the Celtics, if they want to get him, they actually have to wait till the summer, after the season, in the off season. So Davis is actually not a free agent until 2020. So if a team traded for him, they'd essentially get him for a year, and after that, he would be a free agent, and he could just go wherever he wants. So if they want him, that he need to be traded. And so there's this rule about a designated rookie extension contract. So like a player with an extension from their rookie deal. So Boston would not be able to trade for Davis until July 1st because of the collecting bargaining rules won't allow Kyrie Irving and Davis to be on the same roster together. It's really complicated, but essentially Kyrie Irving and Anthony Davis can't be on the same roster before July 1st. So if they wanted to trade for Davis now, they'd have to trade Kyrie too, which I agree that Anthony Davis is a better player than Kyrie Irving. I love Kyrie Irving, but Davis is a better player. That being said, if you were to trade them now, even if you don't like Kyrie and you don't like some of his off the field stuff and some of his comments, which we will talk about later, I mean, if you trade him now, you're going back to square one. Basically, you have to rebuild the roster, and you have to figure everything out again, and like try to mesh players together and try to get chemistry to work. So I think that would be a bit of a mess, and I think the Celtics they're gonna have to wait till the off season to offer the Pelicans a trade. I think the Pelicans will wait till the off season because they're not in a rush because they hold Davis's rights till 2020 when he becomes a free agent. So they can trade Davis anytime they want for the next year or so. And it's the Pelicans' job to make sure they get the best offer for Davis because, I mean, Davis is one of the best players in the NBA, and you want a deal that will get close to the value of getting Anthony Davis, and so it's their job to get the best offer, which I think would probably be the Boston Celtics. And also, I don't think the Pelicans want to trade Davis to a team in the West, even though I guess they might have to if the best deal is in the West. So I also, it's been reported that the Lakers called the Pelicans for trade offers, and the Pelicans said no, and they did ignore the call at first, but then they did pick up the call, and apparently the Lakers offered Lonzo, Kuzma, Rajon Rondo, Michael Beasley, and a first round pick, and unfortunately I guess that wasn't enough, and so I think the Lakers would probably want to do the trade right now, so Davis doesn't end up on another team, and then the Lakers would be threatened about not getting Davis signed. But even though it is kind of clear that I think Davis wants to go to the Los Angeles Lakers, which, I mean, one, I don't like the Lakers, so that kind of makes me angry, and I also don't like the idea of teams being able to like big market teams like taking great players from little market teams. It's kind of a problem in baseball too. I don't like players gathering together and coming together and making super teams, and by taking away players from smaller market teams. I just don't. That just doesn't sit right with me. And plus, he wants to go to the Lakers, and like I said, I don't like the Lakers at all. They're like, to me, they're the Yankees of basketball. Um, and so, and so I guess the worry would be that if you got Anthony Davis, it would be a rental because he wants to go to the Lakers, and and especially the Boston Celtics. Recently, his dad came out and said that he does not want his son to be traded to the Boston Celtics. Uh, and I'll paraphrase what he said. He essentially said that he felt that he didn't want them to be traded there because they were disloyal to Isaiah Thomas. Remember that trade, which they said they kind of gave the impression that they were giving him the keys to the franchise, and they basically traded him away. Well, one, I can understand a little where he's coming from because, well, okay, one, loyalty is, I mean, there's really no loyalty in sports, and I mean, Isaiah Thomas is not Anthony Davis's stature of player, and if Isaiah Thomas was at Anthony Davis's like ability as far as how good he is, the Celtics would try to stick with him and keep him on the team. So I think Anthony Davis, if he were to be on the Celtics, I think they would be loyal to him because of how good he is. Like Isaiah Thomas was a very solid player, and he did great things for the Celtics. But unfortunately, there was just a ceiling with him, and unfortunately, just was not good enough for a championship team. And so they traded for a better player, which was Kyrie Irving. And also, I mean, it's a little hypocritical because Davis is not being very loyal to the New Orleans Pelicans. And also, honestly, who cares what the dad thinks? I mean, we don't need any more NBA dads blabbering their mouth. So, yeah, those comments are a little concerning. And I do think Davis kind of, I don't think Davis wants to go to the Celtics, but just remember, Paul George wanted to go to the Lakers, and we all thought that him going to OKC would be a rental. But when he went to OKC and he played with Westbrook and he experienced the fans and he got along with Westbrook really well, he decided to stay in OKC. So that shows that that can change, even though I don't know Davis's mindset. So, and also Lonzo Ball said that he does not want to be traded to the Pelicans and he would rather play for the Bulls or the Knicks. And honestly, shut up, Lonzo. I mean, nobody cares what you think, and you're going to be traded to wherever you want, wherever they feel like it. And why would you want to go to the Bulls or Knicks? I mean, the Pelicans are a much better team than those trash heap of teams. All right, then why don't we move on to Kyrie Irving, who has said some comments that are not exactly very enlightening for Boston Celtics fans. So recently, it's been reported that Kyrie Irving, there's a certain amount of uncertainty that Kyrie Irving wants to stay in Boston. Reports also said that Kyrie would be interested in playing with LeBron James again. And if that wasn't bad enough, Kyrie Irving was asked before the game between the Knicks and the Celtics. He was asked about his free agency and where he's going to go next year. And this was essentially what he said. At the end of the day, I'm going to do the best for me and my career. I don't owe anybody. And he used a word that I'm not going to say, but it rhymes with hit and it begins with S. And he did say that Boston is ahead right now, which the media has not really pointed out. Everybody's pointed out the other quote. And honestly, I think, and he also said, "Ask me July 1st." and honestly, he could have. Honestly, he could have just said, "Ask me July 1st, and I'm focused on this season," and uh, and that would be fine. I think it's the I don't know anybody blank that opens the floodgates for the media to do all the speculation about where Kyrie Irving is going, and I mean, I know Kyrie Irving is kind of annoyed by the media with these questions, but honestly, I think Kyrie Irving should have just done is like, I'll worry about that later. I'm focused on the season. He should have just said that, and the media just wouldn't be focused on Kyrie Irving. For some reason, he just says things to open up the discussion for Kyrie Irving leaving Boston. And I understand that it's not really on his. I would think it's not on his mind, and I think there is a chance that he would probably leave. But honestly, it could just be better if he just didn't say anything at all. And it is a little uncomfortable that he would it just kind of seems like no certainty that he would stay. So, and like it's looking very dubious, because if you get Davis, I mean, there's no guarantee he'll stay. Kyrie Irving, there's no guarantee that he's staying. And also, Adrian Wojnarowski said that in order for the Celtics to make sure Kyrie Irving stays, they might want to get Davis. And Davis and Kyrie are apparently friends, so that would definitely help. And so I don't know. I think Kyrie should just be quiet and not invoke any of this discussion. And as far as his free agency, I think he can get the most money, I think, from the Celtics, because they have the extension from his rookie deal, so I think they can offer him the most money. I know he's from New Jersey, so he's kind of a New Yorker, but why would you want to go the Knicks with probably the worst owner in sports, James Dolan? And also, I've heard rumors about him reuniting with LeBron and the Lakers. But, I mean, he said he wanted his own team, and I have a hard time seeing him reunite with LeBron James. So, I still think Boston is in the lead for Kyrie Irving, but honestly, Kyrie's not really doing anything by making these comments. It just, I don't know, it just invokes us to talk about it, it's just such an annoyance. So, hopefully the Celtics are able to keep Kyrie Irving and maybe get Anthony Davis. I think the best case scenario is the Celtics get Kyrie Irving, Davis, and Tatum on the same team, and that would be your core. And worst case scenario, Kyrie leaves, Davis, they don't get Davis, and Tatum is Tatum is still on the team, and you just got a young core, which isn't not the end of the world, but I don't know if that's enough to win a championship. And actually, probably the worst case scenario that comes to mind is Kyrie leaves, you trade Tatum and a bunch of your young assets for Davis, and then Davis just leaves in the offseason, and then you kind of have to restart. You have to restart with young pieces. So that would be probably the worst case scenario, and I don't think that would happen. So, and also the Celtics reportedly are willing to give up anything but Kyrie Irving. That it's reported that they would be willing to give up everybody except Kyrie Irving in the offseason. So they're convinced that they can get Anthony Davis to stay and re-sign with Boston, but it's a bit iffy. All right, then why don't we take a quick break, and when we come back, we'll talk about the Boston Bruins and how their season has gotten into a bit of a tailspin, and how they've been on a bit of a skid lately. All right, then, welcome back to J-Ho, the Sports Student. Let's talk about the Boston Bruins, who have been in a bit of a skid. They've returned from All-Star break, and unfortunately, that hasn't really changed. They've been like the Celtics, in which they've been kind of a roller coaster. going up and down. They've had great stretches. They've had some horrible stretches. This is one of those horrible stretches. Recently, they've lost 6 of their last 8 games, and so let's talk about all the games so far. So first, they played Washington, who has essentially owned them, and they lost 4-2. I mean, this is better than the 7-0 thrashing from the opening, but still not enough. Halak was the goalie. So as far as shots, Boston completely outshot Washington 41-22. Hits, Boston had 25. Capitals had 32. Penalty block shots 7. Boston had 7. Capitals had 18. Takeaways, Bruins had 12. Capitals had 7. Giveaways, Boston had 6, and Capitals had 14. So Capitals scored first, and then the Bruins found a way to tie the game. But then immediately the Capitals would get a lead again with a goal, especially the last goal that won the game. Halak did not have a very good game. He allowed a few goals that should have been stopped, especially the game winner, which I think was just a shot to get the puck near the net. But it eventually went in, and that turned out to be the game winner for the Capitals. And also Holtby, I mean, like he faced 41 shots and he stopped 39 of them. So even though the Bruins completely outshot the Capitals, Holtby for some reason turned to Patrick Waugh and was blocking like all the shots. So it was completely disheartening to watch as the Bruins were getting shots on goal, but they just couldn't find a way to get the puck into the net. And they had some opportunities too, but unfortunately they just couldn't do it. And also Lars Eller, I think, challenged Brad Marchand to a fight. Remember how Marchand was not happy with Eller at the end of the game, the opening game. And basically, Eller called out Marchand for being a wimp, and Marchand said at that point he wasn't going to get a penalty, so whatever. It doesn't really matter to me. Next, the Bruins played the Toronto Maple Leafs and beat them 3-2 in an impressive victory in Toronto. Rask was the goalie. As far as shots, Bruins had 29 shots. Maple Leafs had 32. Hits, Bruins had 29 hits. Maple Leafs had 28, so pretty close. Face-off wins, Bruins had 28. Maple Leafs had 30. Block shots, Bruins had 20. Maple Leafs had 11. Takeaways, Bruins had 2. Maple Leafs had 9. Giveaways, 12 for Bruins and 18 for the Maple Leafs. So in this game, Bruins scored first, and then the Maple Leafs were able to score 2 goals in the second and take a lead. But then the Bruins would rebound with 2 goals in the third and were able to bounce back. So it seems like the Bruins, like I was talking about earlier, how the Capitals completely own the Bruins. Well, it looks like the Bruins have a mental edge over the Maple Leafs. It just seems like even though so far this season the Maple Leafs have been the better team, they've been more consistent and they have a better record. The Bruins have played the Maple Leafs really well, so that's encouraging if they were to meet in the playoffs. So that was a very good victory. And then it would just kind of go downhill from there. Next, the Bruins played the Montreal Canadiens, so Canadiens week, and they unfortunately lost in overtime. Boston scored first, and then the Canadiens scored in the first. Then the Canadiens scored in the second, but then the Bruins were able to tie in the third period, and then overtime they lost. As far as stats, Bruins had 43 shots. Canadiens had 22 shots. And hits, Bruins had 23 hits. Canadiens had 29 hits. Power play opportunities, Bruins had 3 and only got 1 goal out of it. And block shots, Bruins had 14. Canadiens had 11. Takeaways, 16 for the Bruins, and Canadiens 14. And giveaways, Bruins had 13, and giveaways, the Canadiens had 7. So on the Bruins side of the on the Bruins side, Brad Marchand had a pretty good game. He had a goal and an assist. David Krejci also had a goal. However, Carey Price looked like Carey Price. He blocked 41 shots. And even though the Bruins were able to get 43 shots on goal, they were only able to get 2 goals. So pretty underwhelming, and they lost in overtime. So pretty bad loss. And the next, you would think that the Bruins would be able to bounce back, and when they played the Philadelphia Flyers, who are not a very good team. That at the time they were 18, 23, and 6, and they had just fired Ron Hextall, the GM, and Dave Hextall, the coach, and they were kind of a reeling team. But unfortunately, the Bruins lost to them, 4-3. As far as shots, Bruins had 42 shots, Flyers had 19, and then as far as hits, the Bruins had 18 and Flyers had 17. Power play opportunities, Bruins had 4, Flyers had 3. Both got goals off power play opportunities. And then as far as block shots, Flyers had 30, Bruins had 8. Takeaways, Bruins had 10, Flyers had 9. Giveaways, Bruins had 10, Flyers had 13. And I forgot to mention, but Rass played against Toronto and Montreal, and Halak played against Philadelphia. So when this game started, Bruins got off to a hot start, going up 2-0, and then they basically collapsed and allowed 4 goals in 3 periods to the Flyers. And at the end, the Bruins were able to get a goal, but it just wasn't enough. And Peter Cehlarik, I think that's how you say his name. I'm sorry if I mispronounced that. Did have 2 goals, so he played really well. But Sean Couturier had 3 goals against the Bruins, and Carter Hart. Apparently, why do these goalies play so well against the Bruins? And Carter Hart had 39 saves on 42 shots. My God. And so that was a pretty horrible loss to a pretty bad team. But then they moved on, and next they played the Blues, who are one of the bigger disappointments of the year in the NHL. Probably the biggest disappointment, to my mind, is probably the Florida Panthers. But the Blues are a pretty big disappointment. So the Bruins basically dominated most of this game. So as far as shots, Bruins 27, Blues 30. Power play opportunities, Bruins had 2 power play opportunities. They got a goal off of that, and Blues had 3 power play opportunities. Didn't get a single goal. Block shots, Bruins had 15. Blues had 11. Bruins had 12. Takeaways, I keep saying Flyers. Blues had 15. Giveaways, Bruins had 13. Blues had 25. So overall, a very good team effort. They won 5-3. Bruins scored first in the second period, and then the Blues scored twice. But then the Bruins dominated the third period and scored 3 goals. Zdeno Chara had an assist. Chris Wagner had a goal and assist, and David Krejci had 3 assists. So overall, a very good team effort. And then next, the Bruins played the New York Rangers, the tanking Rangers, and they lost 3-2. As far as stats, Bruins had 29 shots. Rangers had 20 shots. Hits. Bruins had 20 hits. Rangers had 24 hits. Bruins had 5 power play opportunities and had 0 goals. The Rangers had 3 and got a goal. The Bruins had 8 penalty minutes. Rangers had 12. Block shots, Bruins had 3. Rangers had 12. Takeaways, Bruins had 6. Rangers had 16. Giveaways, Bruins had 14 and Rangers had 12 takeaways. Uh, Denton Hyman had a goal, so pretty good for the Bruins. But Mike, I'm gonna try to pronounce this. Zibanejad, player on the Rangers, had 2 goals. And so in this game, the Bruins scored first, then the Rangers scored, and then the Rangers scored in the second period, and then the Bruins tied it in the third period, and then the Rangers got the lead, and they didn't look back. So going into this point, then they got the All-Star break, and so the Bruins were not looking good, but I feel like they got the break at the right time, and you would hope that they would rebound, and unfortunately, so far I don't think they've won a game since the All-Star break. So when they came back, they played the Winnipeg Jets, who is one of the better teams in the NHL, and they lost 4-3 in a shootout. Boston got 39 shots. Winnipeg got 27 shots. Hits. Bruins got 24 hits. Winnipeg got 31 hits. Block shots. Bruins got 16. Winnipeg got 21 takeaways. Bruins had 11, and Winnipeg had 12. And giveaways, Bruins had 9, and Winnipeg had 7. And Brad Marchand had 3 assists, and Patrice Bergeron had 2 goals, and Kyle Connor had 2 goals. And unfortunately, even though the Bruins played well in this game, they just couldn't seal the deal, and they blew a lead and lost in a shootout. Bruins led 2-1 in the first period, but then blew a lead, like I said before, and the Jets scored 2 goals compared to the Bruins' 1 goal in third period, which sent the game to overtime. And in the shootout, the Bruins lost. And then next, you would think they would bounce back against the Flyers, but instead of being in Philadelphia, the Boston Bruins were in Boston. However, instead they lost in overtime again, 3-2 against the Flyers. Oh, you kidding me? So okay, let's just go over the shots. So unlike previous games, the Bruins got completely outshot, 41 to 25, and hits. Flyers had 18, Bruins had 13, and block shots. The Flyers had 18, Bruins had 20. Takeaways. Flyers had 13, and Bruins had 8, and then giveaways. Bruins had 13, and the Flyers had 10. And also, this was the return of Tuukka Rask. I forgot to mention, Tuukka Rask got a concussion against the Rangers, so he was out for a little bit. So this is his return, and considering he had to face 41 shots, I thought he did pretty well. And he only allowed 2 goals in regulation, and so I believe he was the best player. He was the best player for the Bruins, and David Pastrnak also had 2 goals, and Travis Shaheem had a goal and assist for the Flyers, but unfortunately in overtime they lost. So far the Bruins have been on a pretty bad skid, and so let's look at the stats for this team. So far they are 18th in the league with as far as goals. They are 4th in goals against, so their defense has been pretty good, even though they've had some pretty bad moments in this skid. Power play, they're actually 2nd, so that's actually pretty good. So here's what I've noticed so far from this Bruins team in this really, really ugly skid. One, they seems to be having trouble scoring beyond the top line. Like, as you can see, like, when going over these games, other than the Flyers game, they've mostly outshot their competition by quite a bit. And for some reason, they just even though they outshoot their competition, they just have a hard time getting the goal into the net, which shows me that they have a hard time with scoring besides through the top line. And if you just only have one line, then it's going to be hard to get good scoring opportunities. And also, even though Halak early in the year was really good, recently he's been not very. He's been kind of underwhelming, and actually, honestly, recently Tuukka Rask I think has played much better than him. So I remember early in the year we had a goalie controversy between Rask and Halak, and I was leaning towards Halak. Now I have honestly no idea, and also the Bruins. Whenever they go to overtime, they just honestly just can't seem to pull a victory. Whenever they go to overtime or shootout, they just seem to lose, which is just very very disgusting and underwhelming. So the silver lining is the Bruins are right now fourth in the Atlantic Division, which means they're still a playoff team. And like the Atlantic Division between the Montreal Canadiens and the Bruins is still very very close. So they could still get that third seed pretty soon. But this skid has just been they've been very very underwhelming, and it's been honestly very depressing to watch. And the next they get to play the Washington Capitals. Yay. Who, like I said earlier, has just completely owned them. So hopefully they can beat the Capitals and they can turn the skid around. But it's just I don't know what to say. I mean, they've just been so bad. And also on a lighter note, David Pastrnak was the only All-Star to represent the Bruins in the All-Star game, and he won the shooting accuracy contest. So good for David Pastrnak. All right, then. Why don't we move on to one last story? Last week the Baseball Hall of Fame inductees were announced. So Mariano Rivera, who was unanimous, Roy Halladay, Edgar Martinez, and Mike Mussina. So Barry Bonds and Roger Clemens were also on the ballot and did not get in again. Roger Clemens and Curt Schilling did not get in again. Mariano Rivera, undoubtedly Hall of Famer. Roy Halladay, rest in peace, I believe was a Hall of Famer. Edgar Martinez, this was his last year on the ballot. I'm happy that he got in because one, I think he deserved to be a Hall of Famer, and two, by allowing him to get in, it opens the door for Big Papi, David Ortiz, to get in the Hall of Fame. Because one thing about a lot of voters, they can be kind of stingy, and I think a lot of Hall of Fame voters believe that don't really see DH as an actual position. And if Edgar Martinez was not able to get into the Hall of Fame, then I think a lot of voters would have said that because Edgar Martinez did not get in, David Ortiz cannot get in. But now that he's in, it opens the door for Big Papi to get in. And Mike Mussina, I wouldn't say he's an overwhelming yes, but I think I would say he was a Hall of Famer. So congratulations to those guys. And as far as Barry Bonds and Roger Clemens, obviously this goes into the controversial issue about steroid users in the Hall of Fame. So what has always really bothered me about this topic is I don't really like the idea of guys that have not been confirmed to actually using steroids are being punished based on speculation that they use steroids, and so they're not allowed in the Hall of Fame. There are certain guys that we're pretty sure use steroids. Like I'm pretty sure Mark McGwire admitted to using steroids. Jose Canseco obviously admitted to using steroids, even though I don't think Jose Canseco's would be a Hall of Famer. And it's always kind of bothered me that let's look at Barry Bonds. Most people do believe that he used steroids, and I kind of agree that it's possible that he used steroids, but he never failed a test, and he never admitted to it. So we're just using speculation, and honestly, we shouldn't use speculation to punish guys for steroids. So I honestly think that's a little unfair. And honestly, me personally, I would put steroid people in the Hall of Fame. I mean, they're part of the history of baseball too, and like especially people that have never been confirmed to using steroids. I think it's completely unfair that they get they don't get allowed into the Hall of Fame because of speculation. I think it's completely unfair. And then there's Curt Schilling, who is not getting in. And honestly, politics, overlook the politics. If you, I know Curt Schilling has said some very controversial stuff, and if you look politics aside, I believe Curt Schilling was a Hall of Famer. If Mussina gets to go in, I think Curt Schilling gets to go in too. All right, then. I didn't really get a lot of questions, so I'll just answer the one question I did get from for fan mail. For fan questions. If you want to ask a question, go to my Instagram. I usually post something where you can put a question. All right, so the question, the only question I got, who is the GOAT of all sports? Tom Brady. Also, he wants a shout out. So here's your shout out, Ryan. What's up, dude? I think when you say GOAT, you mean like greatest of all time, or I don't know. Do you mean like GOAT as far as like the guy who screwed up, who like messed up a game? If you want that, I would say the GOAT would be J.R. Smith. Actually, not J.R. Smith. Let's go with the NFL refs because they screwed up that game in New Orleans. So before we go, I actually just got some pretty big news. It was just announced that the 2019 Pro Football Hall of Famer inductees have been announced. Speaking of Baseball Hall of Fames, and so this is a pretty good class, but the one that really sticks out to me is Patriots cornerback Ty Law, and this is pretty significant because Ty Law will be the first significant player from the Patriots dynasty inducted into the Hall of Fame. He, considering that, in my opinion, this is the greatest dynasty of all time. There aren't any like Hall of Famers that are New England Patriots from that dynasty. I mean, there is Randy Moss, but a lot of people associate him more with the Vikings, and he didn't have the longest stints with the New England Patriots, but I guess you could count that. But Ty Law was a big part of the Patriots dynasty in the early 2000s. I would agree that he was probably the best player in the early 2000s Patriots, and one of the greatest corners, in my opinion, one of the greatest corners of all time. A 5-time Pro Bowler and twice named All-Pro, and also this was his third year as a finalist. So thank goodness he got in, and also his the biggest moment of Ty Law's career was when he picked off Peyton Manning, like I believe 3 times. So I'm very, very happy that Ty Law is in the Hall of Fame, and it's finally good to get a marquee player for the Patriots to get into the Pro Football Hall of Fame. I mean, he did play with the Jets and Chiefs, but and Broncos, but he's a New England Patriot, so that makes me really happy. Who also getting into the Hall of Fame, Champ Bailey, one of the best cornerbacks ever, along with Ty Law. Pat Bowlen, owner of the Denver Broncos until from 1984 to 2014, one of the greatest owners of all time. Gil Brandt, a scout for the Cowboys, and was able to win 2 Super Bowls with the Cowboys. And also, I believe he's a writer for. I believe he is a writer for NFL.com right now. So well deserved. Tony Gonzalez, definitely one of the greatest tight ends of all time. Ed Reed, one of the greatest safeties of all time, and a player that growing up I definitely feared a lot when the Baltimore Ravens were playing the Patriots. Ed Reed was the defender. Besides Suggs and Lewis, Reed might have been the player I feared the most because he was one of the smartest players, and he was a very hard player to game plan for, and so Ed Reed deservingly so is in the will be in the Hall of Fame. And then two players that I can't say I'm very familiar with, but Johnny Robinson, who played his entire career with the Kansas City Chiefs, and then there's Kevin Mawai, who was drafted by the Seattle Seahawks, and the height of his career was with the New York Jets, and he also played for the Tennessee Titans. I think I might have heard of him, but this is a very quarterback-centric draft Hall of Fame class. But the big one for me is Ty Law. So it's pretty exciting that a New England Patriot, a marquee, a cornerstone player for the Patriots that was drafted by the Patriots and contributed a lot to the Patriots dynasty, is going to the Football Hall of Fame. I'm very, very happy about that. All right, then. Thank you for listening to the podcast. I think this might be the longest podcast I've ever done. So thank you for listening. And next week, hopefully, the Patriots will be victorious in the Super Bowl, and I'll do a recap of the Super Bowl. Thank you for listening, and I'm out.